this time period when this threat was going on, I was very aware of my surrounding. But there was this one day when I was leaving work, there was a compact car that was following me. And it had two Hispanic-looking men, dark-skinned looking men riding it. It was kind of a beater car. And I thought maybe they might be following me. So I turned off and went down a side street. And the car came down the same side street. So I decided to keep going, and I tried one or two more turns, and they continued to follow me. In my car, of course, I'm armed. I have my pistol, and in my car I carried a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. And we made our way onto the freeway. I got up ahead of them a ways, so I thought maybe this wasn't a big deal because didn't seem like they were trying to chase me or anything. But then traffic at the Spaghetti Bowl, it's where two major freeways intersect, started to come to a slow. And as I'm sitting in the left lane, traffic came to a stop, and they ended up eventually coming up on my right. And as I'm sitting there in my car, I'm thinking, okay, here we go. This is it. They're gonna pull up on my right-hand side, and they're gonna unload everything they have on me, and I'll be on the news. As they pulled up next to my car, I have the barrel of the shotgun pointed directly at them in case they decide to start unloading on me. And I'm just waiting for a threat to be presented, and drives on. His lane continued, and I take the shotgun and kind of drop it down, and I exhale, and I'm just kind of stressed out. Nothing happened.
As a member of the Repeat Offender Program in Las Vegas, Detective Nichols sought those criminals who made crime their life's work, and this remains a problem throughout the United States. A recent study by the Bureau of Justice presented in 2018 followed 400,000 inmates released in 2005 and found that by their 9th year out of prison, 87% of all property crimes offenders had been arrested. Perhaps even more alarming is the fact that only 13% of all property crimes cases are solved. There is perhaps no better example of this than the case of Damon Monroe, a career criminal and serial burglar who terrorized Las Vegas businesses for nearly 15 years, resulting in one of the most prolific theft rings in the city's history. Damon Monroe chose crime as his career. This is the story of the Las Vegas police detective who caught him.
A very small percentage of offenders commit a very large percentage of crime. So about 5% of all criminals account for about 50% of all criminal activity. If we are somehow able to identify that core 5%, then we have the opportunity to reduce a very substantial amount of criminal activity. The catch is identifying the 5%.
To combat these career criminals, police departments deploy elite surveillance teams, commonly referred to as ROPE, an acronym standing for Repeat Offender Program.
The Repeat Offender Program focused on the top most prolific criminals in Las Vegas.
The impact that they were making in the community in a negative way put them in what we like to refer to as the upper 10 percentile of criminals, the ones that just were not going to stop.
In order to qualify as a ROPE target, a criminal would also have to qualify per Nevada Revised Statute 207.010 as a habitual criminal as well. This means a criminal must have been convicted of a felony 3 times previously in addition to being convicted of the current felony case. Sentencing in these cases ranges from 10 to 25 years to life in prison.
The truth is, unless you get sentenced to life without parole or the death penalty, at some point you get sentenced, you go to prison, and that is going to expire and you are released, and there isn't anything the system can do about it. And the hope is that you won't commit crimes when you're back out, but many people that get in the system have no intent to get out. They're just career criminals. That's why we have the habitual criminal statute.
Once we target a career criminal who qualifies for Nevada's habitual criminal statute, our goal was to set up surveillance in the hopes that we would catch them in progress committing a felony crime.
When you're talking about repeat offenders or habitual offenders, you got to understand these are not people that are once every 6 months committing a crime. In all actuality, this is who they are. This is what they do. And so continuously arresting them simply served no purpose. We want to do everything that we could to make sure that A, we had good criminal cases that were prosecutable and ultimately sentenced them to a habitual offender charge.
Damon Monroe stands as one of the Las Vegas repeat offender program's most notorious and prolific career criminal cases. But long before he arrived on Rope's radar as a target, a station-level plainclothes team investigated a 1991 theft ring where Monroe, who also goes by the name of Damon Hoyt, had begun terrorizing commercial businesses and honing his craft as a serial burglar. Dennis Flynn was on the Line Solution policing team who first encountered Monroe and his fledgling criminal enterprise.
Most of the time burglars will go in and they'll just take high dollar items, stuff that's easy to carry, maybe small computers, cash, things like that. Not these guys. They took everything. When I say everything, they were they rolled up a rug from the business and put it in the truck. They took artwork. They took a large recliner chair. Just things that most people would never take in a burglary. But we watched them. And they loaded it all up into Damon's truck, and we followed them from that business and followed them right back to the apartment complex, and we watched them load everything into their apartment. So we decided that was our chance to act. We all put on these yellow jackets and we went up to the door, but we left one guy in plain clothes, and we were going to use what we call a ruse, some type of trickery that we could use to see if we get him open the door, because we figured they probably wouldn't open the door to a bunch of guys standing there in yellow police jackets. So we sent one guy up there and had him ring the doorbell, and as soon as he did, we were standing to each side of the door, and as soon as he rang the doorbell, Damon had come to the door, and you could see he came to the peephole. He said, "Who is it?" And so the ruse that one of our partners had used was, "Hey, if that's your gray truck that's in the parking lot, I think it came out of gear. It's starting to roll down the parking lot." So of course he was nervous. He opened up the door and he said, "What?" And as soon as he opened up the door, the rest of us in yellow police jackets identified ourselves and told him we were the police. We had enough to arrest him right there for the burglary. And this guy, with 4 police officers in front of him, took a swing at us, like he was going to beat up all the cops that were now at his door. So we put everybody into custody and we do a quick sweep of the apartment. The apartment's just filled with all types of different property, but not junk. It was nice stuff. Just in that bathroom area, I remember I had opened up underneath the sink area. He had probably 30 or 40 different bottles of Paul Mitchell hair care products, all brand new, multiple things of the same product. And I said, "Where did you get this?" And he said, "Well, look at my hair. I have very long hair. I use this because I use a lot of hair care products." And I said, "Nobody uses this much." I mean, it was obvious that it was taken from somewhere. Okay, I took this from this one particular beauty supply place, but that's all I took. And we would have to go through that with every item in his place. And he admitted to several dozen commercial burglaries. And based off the evidence that we had recovered, it was so overwhelming, he pled guilty to the vast majority of the charges.
Monroe was convicted in 1992 of 15 felony counts stemming from Flynn's investigation. In addition, he was convicted of 2 other felony counts in a 1993 criminal case, and again in 1996 for both commercial burglary charges as well as ex-felon possession of a firearm and evading police. He was paroled from his second prison term in 2000 as a 19-time ex-felon, immediately returning to his chosen career of crime.
Even trying to get him to go from, say, 3 or 4 days a week to 1 day a week was, that was completely unreasonable for me to ask him or for me to think for him to do that. it was like an addiction, you know.
Tammy was Monroe's girlfriend in 1995, who at 15 years old became pregnant just prior to his second prison stint in 1996. Because of their child in common, Tammy rekindled her relationship with Monroe when he was released from prison in the late 2000s.
The main things would be anything he thought that he could easily sell, which would be computers, laptops, flat screen TVs. Those were the primary things. You know, he burglarized places like Arby's and stole meat slicers. So then when he had these big things of meat from Arby's, that he could slice them up at home. You know, he was good at it, and I think it just gave him that adrenaline rush, and he just really enjoyed doing it.
There's no telling how many burglaries Monroe committed in the early to mid-2000s, but on the night of September 24th, 2006, his fortunes began to change. A witness at a local bar saw two suspects break into a dentist's office located next door and called the police. Patrol officers investigating a break-in at a nearby crystal shop responded and stopped a white 1997 Plymouth Grand Voyager leaving the parking lot. The van was driven by Damon Monroe and his accomplice, Brian Ferguson. In the vehicle, the officers found property stolen from the crystal shop, as well as several items known to be commonly used as burglary tools. Monroe and Ferguson were arrested for burglary, conspiracy, possession of stolen property, and possession of burglary tools. It was this case that put Monroe on the repeat offender program's radar.
Mr. Monroe was a 19-time convicted felon, and his case came across my desk. I learned that he was arrested for a commercial burglary by some patrol officers, and I started taking a look into the case.
By September 27, 2006, the case was tracked to Rote District Attorney Sandra Allred de Giacomo.
And I remember saying, well, the way the case is now, it's just not possible, because it was not a great case when it came in, because we had stolen property in the vehicle, but we couldn't prove that they had actually gotten in and out of the business, which was a problem because there was no forced entry.
Monroe bailed out of jail shortly after being arrested, with Ferguson remaining in custody on a probation hold. Given the DA's concerns, Detective Nickel began his investigation by utilizing a familiar resource.
The majority of the work that I did to be able to construct or compile information to obtain search warrants and develop probable cause for search warrants was listening to the jail phone calls.
Hello, this is a free call from an inmate from the Clark County Detention Center.
Hello?
Dude.
Made it, huh, Peg?
Yeah. Look, dude, look, man. You just remain calm, everything's cool, your bills are paid.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a problem, you didn't do anything, I didn't do anything. It's all crazy, dude. We didn't do anything.
I know, well, fuck.
So here's the thing. Yeah, I had some sledgehammers in my car, and I had some other things. Like, so fucking what? Those are legal. Those bent things are fucking when I had my car keys locked up.
No, none of that's even... Fuck,
The property that was in the car was behind a garbage can, dude. I don't know if I interrupted the I don't know.
Yeah, I know, fuck.
So you have nothing to worry about. Now, it's easier for me to say because I'm home now.
Yeah, no shit.
When inmates are at the Clark County Detention Center, they're given access to the phones, and they know that the phones are recorded. They're told that. But I guess they think that maybe people won't be listening or something, or maybe, who knows, they've become lazy or complacent in their desire to not get caught, so they talk on the phones anyway. Many times the police are not listening, but this time the police were, and I listened to many hours of phone calls between Mr. Ferguson, who remained in the jail on a probation hold, and Mr. Monroe, who had bailed out of jail very quickly.
Other than the tools, their case is sorry, dude.
Fuck, I don't even think you gotta worry about that.
No, not really. I mean, I'm not really worried about nothing if I get a good attorney. And here's the thing, too, is that the one where they had the guy that said, you've seen us do something or whatever, guys, they didn't even charge us for that.
Yeah, it's fuck.
It's a joke, dude. It's a fucking joke.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, I didn't even know what the fuck was going on, dude. I don't even think they could really even charge me with, convict me of fucking anything, dude.
For what?
That's what I mean.
They didn't find anything. They found the Chinese guy stuff, and that was it, dude.
Yeah.
And that was put behind a garbage can, I'm telling you, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we'll get a good enough attorney, dude. I'm telling you, everything's fine, dude.
Yeah.
One of the things we didn't know about the burglaries that they committed was how they made entry into the structures. There was no evidence of entry. There was no damage on any locks or doors, no broken windows, no holes in a roof, no ventilation systems that were torn open.
Yeah, Bobby just left. You know, I'm going through the same thing you are, kind of like an emotional up and down trying to figure this out, right?
What's going on?
I'm going to say, look, this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, look, I was out and about driving, and I usually go get pallets. And I said, fucking, when I was going to the garbage can, by this back door, there was like fucking, and it was completely, everything was down. There was these two wooden things and some other shit all scattered around. And so I threw them in my car, and right after that, my buddy was waiting by the bus stop. I picked him up. We drive down the street. I got to take a piss. I go piss, and some dude calls the cops on us, and next thing you know, they fucking say I stole the stuff. That's it, period.
Yeah.
What Bobby said he thinks is going to save us is that we didn't, there's no damage on the door.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you think they figure out Matthew?
No.
That would be the only stitch.
No, I don't think so, dude.
I don't even think they're looking at that right now.
I don't either.
I went to the evidence vault and examined the tools that were impounded that night from Mr. Monroe and Ferguson's possession in the van, and there was one tool that stuck out in particular. It was this long, what used to be a screwdriver that had been bent at a 90-degree angle. And it was clear that that was somebody's favorite tool because they put an awful lot of effort into constructing it. So I knew it had a specific purpose. Well, I took that tool and the other tools back out to the crime scenes. After, you know, doing some thinking and walking around and looking at the different things of evidence at the scene, I was able to figure out that this tool was used to open the front doors to the business without leaving a mark. I actually tried it myself and was able to operate the tool in opening the door in less than a minute, the first time I ever tried. So I think somebody that had experience in using the tool might be able to do it in a lot quicker fashion. In fact, one of the eyewitness that saw them actually use the tool and go inside a business said that he thought they had a key, that they were so quick with it.
Detective Nickel was able to figure out this tool that they used called Matthew. And it was a long screwdriver that had been bent at a 90-degree angle and shaved down so it would go between the doors, come up, and open the thumb lock. He was listening to the jail calls and heard that they were still talking about making Matthews or having Matthews.
I want you out too because I can't go out and do shit.
Yeah, fag.
And you know, I don't think they're going to figure out Matthew. I don't think so.
No, I don't think you got to even worry about that.
I think it, you know, if the big boys would have, you know, it might have been, they might have, you know, well, but those guys are just throwing it in there for evidence. They're just going to bag it up in evidence. That's it, dude. So, yeah, I think we're cool on that. I'm going to have to make a couple more of them now, but that's cool.
The conversations that they had were very revealing. They talked about crimes that they had already committed, crimes that they were planning. They talked about some of their methods. They talked about their Matthew tool. They talked about it like it was an ordinary business.
They say you've got a real attorney up there standing up saying, you know, this is a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
You'll be all right, dude. And I just think that, you know, we don't ever have this problem. We might go out in another 5 years and not have a problem and have it again. You just don't know.
Yeah.
And if it costs us $5,000 or $4,000 every 5 years, you know what? I can live with that, dude.
Yeah, no shit.
I'm telling you, if we can get you out, and I told you the best time for that one thing, you're going to wind up getting $2,000 or $3,000 that night anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so fuck, they can suck my dick, dude. And you know what? The more I think about it, the more I think that they thought we were just little busted cats, dude. They didn't think we were anything big.
Yeah, I know that. I know that. Fuck.
Well, that's a good thing because they won't figure out Matthew. See, what kept me up all night was thinking, oh, God, you know, what if they know about Matthew? And I was talking to Bob, I said, dude, they're not even thinking about that.
No, they're not, yeah.
They would have said something to us that day, dude.
Yeah.
So, just remember, we're cool, dude. We're cool, dude.
With Monroe indicating to Ferguson he was still burglarizing businesses, rope detectives began surveilling Monroe from outside his residence, hoping he would lead them to observing the prolific criminal in the act.
He had fortifications around the house, meaning he had steel bars on all the windows and doors. He had cameras under the eaves that would give him early notice and ability to view people outside of his house, which would be unsafe for their tactics on approach if Mr. Monroe or anyone inside wished to do the police harm.
We were brought together, we were briefed on what was going on, and told that we were going to start doing surveillance on him in the hopes of gathering enough information for a search warrant.
Mr. Monroe quickly discovered that there were two vehicles out of place on his street. He walked, as I was told, he walked out into the front yard and was paying attention to one of the vehicles, one of the detectives undercover on the street, and he went back inside. He quickly came back outside and got in a car and started driving directly towards the detective. The detective decided to peel off and leave the neighborhood. Well, Mr. Monroe followed him for several miles and was doing what we call mad dogging, where a target discovers they might be being followed and they start to try to be the guy doing the following. It's a cat and mouse game.
These late October 2006 surveillances led to the discovery of a 27-foot moving truck frequently parked in front of Monroe's home, which was registered to Robert Bobby Holmes, a longtime Monroe associate who was arrested for a 1991 burglary committed with Monroe, and the same Bobby referenced in phone calls between Monroe and Ferguson.
We followed him to a storage unit not far from the house, and it was a pretty large complex, and we made the address, made note of it in our surveillance notes, and when the time came for the search warrant, we were able to find information inside the house to validate that he did have an account there, and that led us to do a piggyback search warrant on the storage unit.
As Rope continued to observe Monroe and Holmes utilizing the truck to move items to and from several storage units, a preliminary hearing was held for the still incarcerated Ferguson, where he overheard a startling revelation.
They said it's a fucking rope case when I was in court.
They said, what's a rope case?
It's our case.
They said that's a rope case?
Yeah.
How?
I don't know. I forgot. I was going to tell you that, dude. I forgot.
They said this is a repeat offender program case?
Yeah. They said it's a rope case.
How?
I have no idea. It's probably because we're both repeat offenders.
They said this was involved with rope?
I don't know. They said something about fucking rope when I was in court, dude.
Are you absolutely sure?
Positive. I think they probably just told him about it because fucking we both got records, dude.
Yeah, but see, the problem is if rope gets involved in the case, they ask for life sentences.
Oh, great.
God, you just gave me the shivers, dude. Stomach just knotted up, dude.
A normal criminal, if they learned that the repeat offender program was looking into their activities, a normal criminal might probably try to disappear for a while and go silent. Stop doing what they've been doing for a while to see if maybe the repeat offender detectives will go away. That wasn't Mr. Monroe at all. He became antagonistic and wanted to thumb his nose to authority. Chief Deputy District Attorney Sandy DiGiacomo contacted me and told me that another district attorney had seen these signs that had been plastered all around the courthouse and the jail downtown on light posts. And these signs were like a warning to felons. There was an image of somebody standing there in handcuffs, and it said, "Warning felons, these detectives are trying to catch you committing crimes." And it listed the names of several current and previous rope personnel, detectives and leaders.
Why would he even show up for court? You haven't done anything.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know, dude. I'm thinking about, because if he don't show up, all the charges get dismissed anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, how are they going to have a case if he don't go?
I was listening to some jail phone calls between Mr. Ferguson and Mr. Monroe, and this was one of those times when Mr. Monroe was trying to use coded language and Mr. Ferguson didn't understand. And he was talking about how he had spoken with another one of his crime partners named Bobby. It was Robert Holmes. And they were talking about the idea of maybe having the owner of the china shop go take a swim.
What's funny is I went and hang out with Bobby, one partner I told you about. Fuck, dude. He said, man, 10 fucking buy.
What?
He said, for 10 buy, and I said, nah, not right now, dude.
What?
He said, for 10 G's.
Yeah. Nah, fuck.
People could fucking, go swimming for a little bit.
As it progressed in its explanation to Mr. Ferguson that Bobby had gone out to the business and tried to get a feel for this shop owner to see if maybe he was somebody that could be bought into not going to court, and that they had discussed whether or not they wanted to take him out and have him go swimming.
Though the witness threat could not be proven to the extent that new charges would be filed, the need to move on Monroe became evident, and after 6 weeks of investigation, it was now time to take the next step.
I was able to discern enough information to present probable cause to a judge to get search warrants for Mr. Monroe's house, Mr. Ferguson's apartment, and 2 storage units around Las Vegas that we discovered they were using.
On the morning of November 6th, 2006, the Las Vegas Police SWAT team and rope detectives served the search warrant simultaneously at all 4 locations. What they uncovered remains shocking to this day.
It was amazing. I mean, the pictures did not do justice to the amount of stolen property in that house.
As I went into the house, and I stopped right in the entryway, and it was like the entrance to Aladdin's cave. I'd never seen anything like it before in my life.
My first impression when I walked into the house was I had never seen so much stolen property in my life.
The house was just packed. Even the garage had fully working Coke machine with all the dispensers. It had multiple Viking freezers out there. I mean, it was just an amount of stolen property that was incredible.
Every inch of wall space was covered with some elaborate, extravagant, expensive piece of sports memorabilia or some electronic device. This house was packed full of an incredible museum-like volume of material.
There was property on every part of the floor that all had to be cataloged and organized. The garage was stacked with all kinds of stolen property. I had never seen a house, in one sense, so organized with the pictures hanging all over the wall and so cluttered on the ground with stolen property.
He liked having all the expensive things in our house and having a soda machine in our house, having an ice maker in our house, having things for him to be comfortable at the house to where he felt like he didn't have to leave the house until he wanted to leave the house because he wanted to go burglarize a place and get more things through the house.
The discovery meant cataloging over 1,700 items and matching each based on crime reports with the victims of whom they were stolen from. An arduous task that took dozens of detectives, crime scene analysts, and evidence technicians.
The rare collectibles that he had. I mean, there was a large framed photograph of the 5 then living U.S. presidents together on the White House lawn that was autographed by all 5 of them.
Damon Monroe had no gainful employment. I couldn't understand how he even afforded to live in a 2-story house in a nice neighborhood like that. Perhaps his girlfriend was working. But that house was absolutely full of very nice paintings and sports memorabilia that was signed.
We were able to piece together items with different police reports that have been made of burglaries around Las Vegas area. I think we had 26 named victims.
I don't think people realize that, that's your bread and butter. That's not a pastime or a hobby. It's like your main income. And to see all that disappear in an instant, it's a punch to the gut, and it's like your first thing is, oh my God, I've got clients scheduled. I've got clients' property as far as recording in my instance, and a computer with all that data is gone, and the equipment that you bought, and very expensive equipment and very detailed to its uses, and it goes away in an instant, and you're in shock, number one, and you just, what's tomorrow, what's next week, what's next year?
There were a couple of different victims that said that they had to go out of business because they were cleaned out completely.
Put me out of business. Essentially, I had ongoing clients. I had clients like MGM Grand, where they did a lot of recording. They had the theme park at the time. They did a lot of production numbers. So I had a lot of clients that I had to send to other businesses.
Your house or your home is really the one place in the world where you feel you should be secure. And in the case of a burglary, you have people who are in your home, they're rummaging through your private effects, and the emotional trauma that's associated with that can have a very long and lasting impact.
They so thoroughly went through my office that they found a shoebox in a back office, in a cabinet, on a shelf, that had laminates in it. These backstage passes. They were from every tour, every show I did when I started back in the mid-'80s. They were my keepsakes. And I remember thinking, am I ever gonna get these? These are just meaningless in terms of money, but for emotional value and I mean, they were priceless to me, and I never got them back.
They were thankful that they were getting some of their stuff back, but they talked about that time period when everything was taken from them and how devastated they were.
Meanwhile, detectives served search warrants at multiple storage units related to Monroe's theft ring, recovering hundreds of additional stolen items, including a further abundance of high-end furniture, sports, music and movie memorabilia, rare artwork, and autographed items. Every piece of property was cataloged and researched for connection to a local commercial burglary.
You had over 300 years of police experience at this scene, between the different detectives, supervisors, crime scene people. There were dozens of people that were involved in this. And in the collective 300 plus years of police service, nobody had ever seen anything like it before.
In total, the stolen property recovery ranks among the biggest in Las Vegas history, estimated at over $2 million. Monroe was arrested on multiple counts of possession of stolen property, as was his girlfriend, Tammy. With no criminal record, Tammy was soon released, and Ferguson, already in jail and whose vehicle was found in Monroe's backyard, loaded with stolen property, was rebooked on new charges. Monroe soon began to panic as he attempted to cover his tracks, which meant calling the one person not in custody.
Hello? What up, dude? Hey, what's up? Okay, you know what's happening, right? Yeah. Them motherfuckers ripped my door off and everything, homeboy. Right. They took it. Was it on the news? Yeah. On the news.
It's a great headline news, man. They're at my house right now.
What?
Yeah, they're at my house. I'm gonna go home right now.
Did you clean up the spot?
No.
You got to do that, dude. That spot's got to be clean, dude.
I know, but don't do right now. You can't do nothing right now, man.
They already know. You understand?
How did you know?
I think they signed the paperwork on it.
Yeah, dude, it just ain't shit to really motherfucking, you know what I'm saying?
But dude, there's that little thing in there.
Yeah.
What'd they say on the news about it?
They said $2 million went to shit.
They only got 6 counts on me, dude, right now.
What time was this they got you?
6 in the morning, dude. I got to get that one thing over there fucking done, though, dude.
I know.
Just, it's nothing, man. Just get that little thing out.
I know.
And the other stuff.
As you might have guessed, Holmes never made it to what would be the 4th discovered storage unit related to Monroe. The rental paperwork indicated the renter as Ashton Monroe, one of the false identities used by Monroe, discovered in the initial search warrant, which led detectives to another search warrant in an effort to locate more stolen property. And the thing that Monroe wanted out of the unit so desperately turned out to be a stolen .38 revolver found tucked in a black garbage can full of hair care products, resulting in the additional charges of ex-felon possession of a firearm and possession of a firearm with obliterated serial number added to the growing list. With over $13,000 recovered during the search warrant at Monroe's house, the financial aspect of the theft ring began to unfold.
These guys had bank accounts. That was extremely unusual. And the documents showed that there were hundreds of thousands of dollars in these bank accounts.
He loved accumulating wealth and money in the bank. You know, he just liked seeing the account balance just rise and rise and rise.
I worked with our local banking network and was able to locate these bank accounts and write warrants seizing the bank accounts as proceeds of crime, since neither Mr. Ferguson nor Mr. Monroe had any evidence that they had lawful employment.
Detectives seized over $151,000 in cash from bank accounts in Tammy's and Brian Ferguson's name. In addition, a large quantity of rare coins, money, and collectibles was seized from Ferguson's safe deposit box. As the seizure was taking place, however, bank personnel alerted Detective Nickel of a number of recent high-dollar withdrawals.
I went there to serve the warrant, and the bank manager said, "Too bad you weren't here a couple days ago." I said, "Why is that?" And she said, "Because somebody has been withdrawing substantial amounts of money. There's about $145,000 withdrawn in the past couple of days."
A second warrant was served at Monroe's residence in an effort to recover approximately $150,000 in unaccounted for funds. The money was not found, but as a result of the inquiry, Detective Nickel received a phone call from Tammy in which she requested to meet in person.
Monday morning, out of the blue, I get a call on my cell phone, and it was Tammy. Apparently she was back in town, and she called me and said, "Hey, it's Tammy, we need to talk."
I knew I could go to prison. I knew that I was, going to be waiving rights, but I didn't see any other way out for me other than just to tell the truth.
Right from the get-go, Tammy spilled the beans on everything. There was nothing that I asked her that she wouldn't answer. She completely laid herself on the faith that something good was going to come out of this for her.
That was the most security that I was going and comfort that I was going to find at the time, was just in the fact that I was going to try to do what I thought was right then.
No promises were made to her. I told her that I had no ability to make promises, but I would be able to tell the prosecuting attorney what she had done, what information she had offered. And the prosecutor could, at their discretion and at their time and place, decide whether or not Tammy might get any mercy out of the court. Because of course, Tammy was charged in this case as well with the same exact charges that Mr. Monroe was charged with.
Tammy's statement to Detective Nickel included information on the missing money.
The withdrawal was $225, right?
Well,
you would know better than I.
There's also been cashier's checks for attorneys and things like that.
Right.
There's only 145 in just cash.
Okay.
And
who's holding it?
Bobby.
Bobby Holmes.
Right. And he had said that there is nothing that he would do to help Devin at this point, but he told me he felt sorry for me, and basically, he said that he would want someone to help if it was
What's he going to do with the money?
He was supposed to have called me. He called me, I think it was last night. He was supposed to call me this morning. He hasn't called me yet, but he was supposed to just give it back to me if I, and he was supposed to be holding it so that I wouldn't be walking around with that much money.
Do you think that money's going to disappear?
At this point, I truly believe he'd give it right back to me. Of course.
That information and an attempt by Tammy to recover the money led to Holmes and his attorney turning over $70,000 in cash to authorities on November 30th, 2006, but with no admission of where the money came from and no reasonable explanation as to the whereabouts of the still missing $75,000. Grand jury testimony began on November 28, 2006, lasting for several days and ultimately returning indictments against Monroe, Ferguson, Holmes, and Tammy on multiple counts of possession of stolen property and conspiracy charges. Tammy testified at the hearing, laying out Monroe's criminal enterprise in detail.
When she spoke to her mom, she was just trying to do the right thing at that time, because she had kids, and so she didn't want to end up in prison, but she did it all without a deal from me initially, and just came in and answered the grand jury's questions and laid it all out, what was going on.
When she was away from Damon, it was like a cloud being lifted, and she felt like she had some control over her life again. She had been with Mr. Monroe since she was 14 years old, and pregnant very soon thereafter, I think. She'd known nothing else other than his dominion and control over her life for many years. She was out from under that now, and I think she was exploring that freedom for the first time.
Like now, you know, I mean, even when money is tight, like, I still have, like, there's no one controlling me like there was before. Before, I had, you know, over $300,000 in an account in my name only, but I didn't have any control over it really. I couldn't go to the grocery store and just buy a loaf of bread.
Tammy pled guilty to possession of stolen property and conspiracy with no official deal in place, with that outcome to be determined following her testimony in Monroe and Ferguson's upcoming trials. But it was a mid-February phone call from Tammy to Detective Nickel that would permanently change the complexion of this case.
Her oldest daughter had told some school officials that Monroe had been molesting her. And that, obviously, that made everything take a right turn. In a way, I wasn't surprised because Damon Monroe is capable of anything.
The accusation would also include physical abuse wielded with the use of a stun gun and the threat of harm from Monroe should his daughters ever divulge his crimes.
I contacted the sergeant in our sexual abuse detail, notified her as to what I was told, and put her in touch with Tammy.
The case was investigated by the Las Vegas Police Sexual Assault Detail, with Monroe being rebooked for sexual assault, victim under 14 with use of a deadly weapon, lewdness with a minor under 14, and child abuse with a deadly weapon. It had now been over 10 months since Monroe and Ferguson were stopped by police and arrested after being found in possession of stolen property from the Ankou Crystal Palace. Prosecutors were preparing for lengthy trials where Monroe and Ferguson would come face to face with dozens of people whom they victimized during their multi-year crime reign. But for all the twists and turns Detective Nickel had experienced during the investigation thus far, nothing could have prepared him for what would come next.
Hello?
Rich?
Yeah.
Rich, it's Ed.
Hey, Ed, how you doing, man?
Line's clear for about maybe 7 minutes here.
Okay, what's going on?
Hey, listen, there was an informant here, and I had to leak out what I was going to tell you. There's a hit on a DiGiacomo, which is a DA here.
Okay.
Okay? She's on the rope team. I leaked it to him. He gave it out to Intel here. And the money was to be paid to some Sureños. There's a guy by the name of Holt Simon here. He was caught with $300,000, and he was involved in trafficking, high-level trafficking, and a high-level fencing operation.
I was at a meeting at the Henderson Police Department, and I received a telephone call from the Assistant District Attorney. And he had asked me where I was and asked me where my kids were, and then proceeded to tell me that Jail Intel had information that there was an inmate trying to hire somebody to kill me.
I got a call from Sandy DiGiacomo, the prosecutor, and she said something like, "Hey Brad, detectives just told me that there's a hit out on me. Someone wants to have her murdered." And I said, "Really?" And she goes, "And you'll never guess who the bad guy is." And right when she said that, I remember saying, "No way." And she said, "Yep, Damon Monroe."
On August 9, 2007, intelligence detectives were notified of a potential hit on Deputy District Attorney DeGiacomo through information gained by corrections officers from the Clark County Detention Center. By August 14th, the threat also included Detective Nickel, who again began monitoring calls in Monroe's housing unit and intercepted the August 23rd phone call between the FBI and an informant in jail, which corroborated the DeGiacomo threat. On August 30th, the FBI received information of an additional threat by Monroe against District Court Judge Michelle Levin, the presiding judge for his 3 upcoming trials. Detective Joe Kelly was the lead investigator in the case.
The same individual that had contacted the FBI remained in contact with Damon Hoyt or Damon Monroe, and additional information came forth. At that point then, he started to expand. He wanted to not only take out our Judge Levitt, but also to take out the prosecuting attorney in the case, as well as the rope detective that was pushing the case forward, that had supplied the information and conducted the investigation.
I was told never take the same route twice. And so it went on and from July of 2007 until it broke in the media that ended January 2008 that I didn't take the same route home. I had other people pick up my kids. I just was always trying to be aware of people around me.
The first thing we did when we learned that we had a police detective that was a target, we notified the police detective. When we learned that the judge was a target, we notified the judge, and not only that, we set up 24/7 surveillance on the judge's residence until we could kind of get a grip on this case and find out for sure what was going on.
You know, I'm trying to make a valid determination whether or not I think this threat is real or is this just jailhouse talk. And everything I knew about Damon from that point and before told me that this was a possibility.
The FBI informant, housed in the same unit as Monroe, began to present himself as a potential middleman for the murder for hire, which gave investigators a startling look at Monroe's true intentions.
We had our technical section, Metro's technical section, put a recording device on the informant, and we had them meet at their recreation time in the little basketball court there. There was a lot of background noise, but the recording came out very well, and we were able to determine during the course of this, based upon the questions and answers that were occurring between the informant and Monroe, that this was a viable threat and that he did intend to go forth with it if he could.
Raiders and freezers were $30,000. Bottom line, because I don't want to have conversations over conversations. We're not going to have fucking conversations again. Do you want to hit these fucking people hard or not? Yeah, but how are we going to do it? That's what I've been trying to tell you. If you're how do you do it though? You can't make a move.
We were able to determine during the course of this, based upon the questions and answers that were occurring between the informant and Monroe, that this was a viable threat and that he did intend to go forth with it if he could.
I already told you what to do with that. I mean, you want that done too? You know, I already talked to my people, you know what I mean? Well, yeah. Money is really not the issue. The issue is making a move. I can't do it on the phone. I'm giving you my bitch's number. Call her whenever you need to call her. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
We had a female undercover officer act as the informant's former girlfriend. And the informant gave Mr. Monroe a telephone number to this undercover officer, and we were trying to have them communicate with each other to try to set up the exchange of the money. Now, unfortunately, due to the jail phone system, we weren't able to make the conversation happen because the jail system won't let you call a cell phone. So we ran into some issues there, but nonetheless, we still had 12 or 13 attempts from a jail phone to the undercover officer's cell phone. So we know that he was trying to make the contact. It just never did happen.
Between September 20th and September 22nd, 2007, 13 calls were attempted from Monroe's housing unit to the undercover officer's phone. Soon after, Monroe began utilizing a different form of communication.
Once the information in the jail started floating around about the murder for hire, Monroe became very paranoid about saying anything to the informant for fear that someone would overhear it. So fortunately for us, Monroe then started putting everything in writing. He would write out all of his directions and write out all of his instructions. He would then give them to the informant with the belief the informant then was going to give them to his girlfriend on the outside, and that's how this thing would take place.
Yeah, but we can't be talking all the time, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And the notes are out of the question too. I don't want no fucking paper trail or anything, you know what I mean? I send you a note, you send me a note, and they're walking out in the fucking room before I flush it. It's serious shit, homie, you know what I mean? That's why when I got that thing, I crossed mine and that's why, you know, I sent you the note that, you know, yeah, you crossed out with black and shit and all that.
Fortunately for us, the informant was taking the letters and giving them to law enforcement, and then we were able to send them down to our forensic lab, use known exemplars of Monroe's handwriting, and they were able to forensically determine that these letters, given specific instructions on the murder for hire, had been authored by Damon Monroe.
When I looked at the note, it was obliterated. Had a thick layer of wax substance over the top of what I could see through writing. You could see part of the writing through it because the obliteration was not even all the way through. Like it's much thicker at the top, and then it starts kind of leveling off toward the bottom. And one of the things that I did is I started with the examination of using infrared filters and infrared luminescent filters through a VSC4, that stands for Video Spectral Comparator. And that is an instrument, like I said, that uses a wide range of infrared and infrared luminescent filters. Once that was done, I then did the comparison to known writing of Damon Monroe. I identified Mr. Monroe as the writer of the note, which had obliterations on top. It then goes to a peer review, and the peer reviewer conducted an examination and arrived at the same conclusion.
The examiner's findings provided a harrowing discovery, as the first line of the note read, "Go with killing Levitt, Nichols, hold DiGiacomo."
He wrote, "Go on Levitt and Nickel, hold up on DiGiacomo." And as the informant learned, apparently there was someone else in the jail that had a case with DiGiacomo as well, and he thought maybe that person might do the murder for him and he might not be out the money for it. It didn't work out that way, but at one point in the writing, we definitely have his handwriting saying that he wants to go forth with the murder on 2 out of the 3.
An additional note also indicated Monroe was ready to go forward with the hit, which prompted detectives to have him moved to isolation and attempt to interview him in jail.
First off, I want you to understand that we're not here to talk to you about anything that you're currently in custody on, okay?
I'm sure I realized that already.
What we are here to talk to you about are some allegations that have been floating around, and that's the reason for your move today, and it's going to stay that way until we get to sort through things just a little bit.
That's fine.
Okay, we've received what we believe to be at least marginally credible information that you may be attempting to cause harm to either a police detective or a district court judge. Okay, so you can certainly see from our standpoint as police officers that we're going to react, and we're going to react to it pretty conservatively in the best way, and that's exactly what this is about.
It seems his demeanor is the same with everyone, that he's arrogant, cocky, but that covers up something much weaker.
He was trying to play it off that he wasn't the perpetrator of the murder for hire, but he was the person they were trying to push it off on to make him look guilty.
All I want to know is that you are aware that I'm looking at a specific allegation.
It's a silly allegation, though. And I'm being honest with you. You want to take a lie detector test? I'm cool with that.
Whether it's silly or it's not silly, you understand. We're still going to look at it.
Fucking hey, it's a serious allegation. But listen, man, you want to put me in a lie detector? I'm cool with that. I'll go right now, wherever you want to go. Whatever you want to do. Dude, it's not my thing. You're talking about murder, man. It's not my thing. I'm not a violent guy. It's not my thing.
On February 19, 2008, Monroe was indicted by a grand jury on 3 counts of solicitation of murder. Because she was a victim of Monroe's intended plot, Judge Levitt recused herself from the stolen property cases as Detective Nickel and Deputy District Attorney Sandra Allred de Giacomo continued preparing for lengthy trials.
This was not an ordinary case.
I think there were 26 named victims in the indictment, and we had a couple dozen more victims as backup that actually he was never charged with those counts because at some point in time we just had to stop.
I had, I think, almost 170 witnesses, I think, subpoenaed on the case. I ended up calling somewhere in the 90 range at each of the trials, but no, this case was nothing like I've ever handled.
After deliberating for an hour and a half, a jury returned guilty verdicts for both Monroe and Ferguson in the trial for the incident at the Crystal Shop and dentist's office. They were convicted on 2 counts of burglary and 1 count of grand larceny, setting the stage for the big property trial in which Monroe and Ferguson would be tried separately. The trial for which Monroe would answer to a 26-count possession of stolen property indictment began on May 13, 2008, and was now being presided over by the Honorable Judge Stuart Bell. Bobby Holmes, who was scheduled to be tried as well, did not appear. Lasting 8 days, the trial included over 1,000 exhibits and over 100 witnesses and victims, including Detective Nickel.
My testimony mostly consisted of the presentation and questioning about the jail phone calls. The jury got to listen to a bunch of them. I mean, there were hundreds that were submitted into evidence by me. And then I think, of course, the trial court has to determine which calls are actually applicable and present good evidence versus being prejudicial, things like that.
I knew going into this that I just was trying to get him habitual criminal treatment, and technically I need 1 count, not hundreds of counts. And it made more sense for the jury in trying to understand when we presented the case to have a count for each victim versus each piece of property that I had to prove a value for.
It was lengthy because we had so many victims. A typical PSP, possession of stolen property, or burglary is a day or 2, sometimes 3, and I think this was a week and a half for Monroe, and then another week and a half for the co-defendant who was tried separately because we had in the dozens of victims and they all had to testify.
Yeah, surprisingly, about 1.5 years ago, because I gave up, it's been like 4 years since the burglary, and a detective called me and said they identified some items from my report 4 years ago and that they recognized the names and the serial numbers and said that they possibly found some of my stuff.
A number of these victims were emotional when they described the impact that the theft had on them, that they just felt personally violated, and it just stayed with them.
But perhaps no testimony was more condemning of Monroe than Tammy's.
I want to ask you whether or not you know a person that's sitting in the courtroom. He's seated at the end of counsel table where I'm pointing. Do you know this person?
Yes.
All right. How do you know this person?
I've known him since I was 14, and he's the father of 2 of my kids.
What is his name that you know him by?
He went by Devin Monroe, mostly.
Your Honor, for the record, I'd like it to reflect that I was pointing at the defendant.
Yes, the record reflect the identification of the defendant, Damian Monroe.
I definitely avoided eye contact, and it was pretty difficult.
We did not need her testimony in order to prosecute Monroe. However, it just cut out any I guess, issue about doubt.
Okay, so flat screen TVs in the house, did you buy those?
No.
Any of the artwork or the cartoon cells in the house, did you buy those?
No, there were, at the time of the search warrant, there were 2 Winnie the Pooh, sell, like, I guess maybe lithographs or something that belonged to my mother that had been purchased while I was a child. But those are the only two in the house.
That belong to you.
Yeah, right.
What about the bedroom furniture in
I
the
didn't-
master?
I never bought any.
You never bought
bedrooms.
any furniture that was in that house?
No.
What about the guitars that were in the house, or the keyboards? Did you pay for any of that?
No.
What about the electronics equipment, speakers, receivers, DVD players, any of that? Did you ever pay for any of that?
No.
When you were living in that house between September 24th and November 6, 2006, did you know that those items, or did you believe those items had been stolen?
Yes.
Tammy's testimony garnered a deal from the district attorney's office, dropping the charges against her, after which she pled guilty to a gross misdemeanor which carried probation. But there was a question that remained.
Defense counsel said, was asking about, well, you could have left at any time. You own the cars, you had the bank accounts with all the money, and you said, I physically could have left. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Right. Why didn't you just take the money and go?
I was told.
I'm not sure I'd go there.
She wasn't given the opportunity to give a response, but perhaps her 2006 statement to Detective Nickel has the answer.
But, he'd say things like, I'm involving you on purpose, and you're involved, and because, basically, I'm going to make sure that anyone around me that if, they were ever to say anything, that then, you'll be taken down too. And he'd say, if you ever do anything with the money that was, I'd kill you.
The jury found Damon Monroe guilty of 26 counts of possession of stolen property and 1 count of conspiracy. Brian Ferguson's trial began on May 21, 2008, and was nearly identical to Monroe's, with over 1,000 exhibits and over 100 witnesses and victims. Ferguson was found guilty by the jury of 25 counts of possession of stolen property and 1 count of conspiracy. Bobby Holmes surrendered on July 15, 2008, and ultimately pled to 2 counts of possession of stolen property and 1 count of conspiracy. Monroe's next trial began on October 1, 2008, addressing the stolen firearm found in one of his storage units.
One of the stolen items found in one of the storage units was a gun stolen from a doctor's office, 38 Special. They couldn't put that charge in with the other big trial because then the jury would know that Mr. Monroe was a felon.
2 days later, Monroe was found guilty, receiving additional convictions for ex-felon possession of firearm, possession of stolen property, and possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number. The final trial in this twisted saga began on April 15, 2009, as Monroe faced 3 counts of solicitation of murder.
The jury needed to understand motive. Why was Mr. Monroe so pissed off that he wanted to have public officials killed?
Even if he had been successful in taking myself out, there would have been another prosecutor that came along and took over the case. Same with the judge, same with the detective.
He wasn't trying to make it so that he wasn't going to go to prison. He knew that whatever was going to happen with the case was going to happen with the case. He was just mad and he wanted to lash out.
The trial included testimony from Judge Michelle Levitt as the shocking evidence of this brazen crime was laid out to the jury.
So it wasn't like we had to depend upon one source, such as the informant's information or the handwriting exemplars or the recording. It's just that all of it together, the totality of all of it together, gave us a very strong case that presented itself well, and we certainly secured the conviction.
He affected hundreds of people's lives over his career, if not more, and he got what he deserved.
The jury agreed, returning a guilty verdict on all 3 counts.
I know this court's familiar with the history of Mr. Monroe, but I mean, he's a prolific thief. He is the poster child for habitual criminal treatment. As he stands before you, he's been convicted of 46 felonies. You're going to add 3 more, so he'll be a 49-time ex-felon after this court is done with him today. His record speaks for itself. He cannot not commit crimes. When Stu Bell sentenced him in October, the judge said to him, look, you know, if you get out, you're just going to start doing this again, and the defendant nodded his head yes. He has no problem breaking the law. It's what he does. He's done nothing but commit crimes. He makes his money by doing these commercial burglaries, keeping some of it and selling some of the property. Basically, Your Honor, this is somebody who should never, ever get out of prison, and that's reflected by his prior sentences. He has never taken responsibility for his crimes. He has no remorse. He cannot be rehabilitated. He is just a thief and a criminal. He has no trouble, you know, having guns in his past, having guns presently, or even talking about killing witnesses. The reason that didn't go through is just because he didn't want to spend the money. That's the way he is. I'd ask you to follow P&P's recommendation, give him a large habitual, life without, run it consecutive.
Sir, you have a terrible record. You're a bad thief, and apparently every time you get out of prison, you keep committing new crimes. And hopefully I can protect our community here. In accordance with the law, state of Nevada, this court does now sentence you to confinement on count 1 to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Count 2, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Count 3, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Counts 2 and 3 to run concurrent to count 1.
The Monroe case shows the opportunistic mindset possessed by property criminals and a clear correlation to violent crime, even when the crime they've committed most recently is deemed as nonviolent.
The Monroe case is an example of someone who wants to retaliate. He was a burglar, and violence was not outside of his realm to use to try and retaliate with.
The fact of the matter is, most property crime offenders, most burglars are serious criminals. They have lengthy criminal records. They will vandalize property if given the time and opportunity to do so. They will injure pets if the pets are getting in the way while they're doing these things. These are not nice individuals, despite how people might think of a property crime or a property crime offense.
It's one thing to say all I do is burglarize homes, but when you've burglarized hundreds of them and there is a chance that you could potentially get caught, I think the level of violence could in fact escalate to the point of I got to do whatever I can do to not get caught.
You will see people when they are pushed to the end that their level of commitment, they'll go through all the way up to their own life. And we've dealt with, unfortunately, many people that are willing to fight it out, shoot it out, and ultimately, when they believe it's to the end of the road, that they take their own life for their fear of going to prison.
If you take an individual that is a multiple convicted felon and you back him in a corner where he thinks if I get caught, I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that that person will do whatever they have to do to get out of that situation, whether it be violence or whatever it takes. They're going to get out of that situation.
And what about the mother who made the right choice for her kids and remains a shining example of a person who has succeeded despite facing seemingly insurmountable odds?
He's never seemed to accept that, you know what, I messed up, I was wrong, I want to change, I want to do better.
But most of all, this case was about the dedication of a police detective and the exemplary efforts made to ensure a prolific criminal would no longer terrorize the Las Vegas community.
The truth was that good detective work and significant perseverance is the reason that this crime spree was stopped.
Detective Nickel. Without him, this case would have never come to fruition. And when I told him that, when we got the initial car stop case, that, it's not good, it's not a good case, it can't be proved, well, he showed me.
The biggest thing that stands out to me is Damon Monroe's girlfriend and her daughters. She took a leap of faith that doing the right thing was going to pay off for her. And it did. One time, one of Damon's daughters was telling me about how she told one of her friends about this whole thing, this investigation and what had happened to them and stuff. And her friend had asked her, well, who's this Brad Nickel character? And she said, oh, Brad Nickel, he's the one that saved us. And when she told me that she said that to her friend, that made me feel really good. Recovering property, getting people's things back to them, holding Damon Monroe accountable and all that kind of stuff, that's valuable to me in my heart and my sense of self-accomplishment. But to those girls who had those horrible things done to them, for them to think of me as someone who saved them, that humbles me.